Hey, what's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to another episode of Outside the Trenches. I'm BJ Kissel with Nick Lecky and Tucker Franklin as we try this new format of the show here on KC Sports Network with training camp just around the corner. We've got another fun show today, but Nick, it's been now 2 weeks in a row that we are recording an episode, which I think is the first time since last season that you and I are on the same page recording now that we're getting close to the season. How's the last week for you been? I heard you just got back from vacation.
Yeah, it is. Got back from a little bit of a much needed break, and it was good. And I feel fresh. I feel good. Definitely didn't drink this weekend, so I feel good.
You never do. I'd be really surprised to hear that you drank, and you would be happy to know that while you were down partying in southern Missouri or wherever, northern Arkansas, wherever you were, Northwest Arkansas. We signed a new partner to KC Sports Network, and it just so happened that it's a liquor distillery up in Weston, Missouri, and Holiday Distillery. So be happy to know that there will be a lot of alcohol and spirits for you in the future.
I'm pissed I can't come to that watch party.
I was going to bring that up, and I don't really want to talk about it. So rather than that, we're just going to put you on pause, and we're going to introduce Tucker Franklin back for a second episode here on Outside the Trenches. We try a little new format, diving deep into a few topics, and we'll tease those here in a little bit. But Tucker, how's the last week been for you, my guy?
It's been good. Been busy. Like as BJ, as you said, we've been adding a bunch of stuff to the KCSN closet, I guess you could say. All the new stuff that we've got coming out. I'm excited to tell people about it, but we got to keep it a secret right now. Can't tell anybody yet. Or BJ will have my head. So what I'm really excited for is, July the 31st, we got that party coming up. It's going to be at Holiday Distillery with Jack Stack Barbecue. Honestly, looking at this Jack Stack logo on the screen right now is making me want some Jack Stack Barbecue. There's never a bad time for Jack Stack Barbecue.
Yeah, and we've been not negotiating, but just discussing back and forth with the best way to get food up to Weston, Missouri for Jack Stack is and how they cater it. And there's not a full kitchen, so they have to bring their own people and heat it. And like they all know how to do this stuff, but it's part of the party planning. It's not what I do, like not my part of it, but it's like, hey, you're throwing a party, we got to figure this stuff out. So it's like, hey, wings are going to be there, the cheesy corn, the baked beans, all that stuff's got to be there. You got to have some burn ends. And the rest of it is just what's the best way to get all that food up there for these people between 5 and 8 o'clock at night. So it's right in the heart of dinner time. There's going to be sample stations from McCormick at the distillery. They're kind of set up. The whole grounds of the distillery, for anybody who's been there before, is going to be open. So you can basically do a self-guided tour holding a drink, having some burn-ins in one hand and a drink in the other, and walk around and see how the bourbon, like all the stuff that they do up there, see how it's made, and have experts explain to you how it is made and how it is local. I think that's the coolest thing about it. Yeah. And talking about this whole party, this whole deal, and this new partner with McCormick and Holiday Distillery is that bourbon is Missouri local bourbon. It's the Kansas City's local vodka. People know about 360 vodka. This bourbon, the corn for this bourbon was like 10 miles down the road. Like that's where it's at. Like it's freaking cool. And I'm sorry that you're not going to be at the party. I'm happy that Tucker is going to be at the party. And Tucker, I'm glad that you can keep a secret because we hired you, keeping the entire secret that we had an entire side of the network that we were hoping ready to launch, and hiring you to help launch, but not explaining to you how busy you were about to be. So it's like, hey, you got a lot of hours, and you started adding it up. Like, we got this many shows. I'm like, yeah, but there could be more, but we don't really know, but we need to hire you. And you can't, like, we're going to block off this amount of time. So
right. I'm glad it's been out. Great. It has been great. It's been going good. How are you, BJ?
Right. I'm good. It was a good weekend. It's been kind of crazy putting all this together. I mean, that's not what this show is about, but the KC Sports Network and the way that it's scaling and where it's going, only a few people out there know. There's some really exciting stuff. And I know in the world of self-promotion, we're going to say that we have this new company. Everything's really exciting coming up. But I'm telling you, there's some really big name, like some really cool stuff when you hear it, no matter what fan of KU, K-State, Mizzou, you're going to hear something and you're going to be like, oh, that's cool. Like, I guarantee you're going to be like, oh, that's cool. Yep. That's all I'm going to say. That's as much tease as I'm going to give right now. You got to wait a few more weeks. But what we are going to do on today's show, I'm really excited about, is that each one of us, myself, Nick, and Tucker, all have a different discussion topic that we're going to spend 10, 12 minutes, 8, 10, 12 minutes, however long it goes, discussing. And we don't know what the topics that the other person has brought. And so we're trying with Outside the Trenches to be a little bit different with the format of the show, because in the spirit of building an entire network out, we want to be able to hit on a lot of different types of content, a lot of different ways that you guys can be distracted from work or whatever it is that you're doing while you're listening to this podcast. So we're trying to help that as best we can. So Nick, I'm going to go to you first. You, my guy, get to learn how to teach me to talk is what you get to do right now. I can't even get the joke out, and I'm not going to edit this because I'm a professional, and I love the fact that people get to see us being bad at our jobs instead of people that edit it all out. It's like, they're very good. They're better. That's okay.
I'm a big music nerd, and I love on albums, like on actual albums, when they leave the producer talk in there, or they say end it, and then the song ends, and it's like, I like that rawness to this thing. And so I will lead off the discussion today on our new schedule, or our new topics. Let's call it blind nil, like with spades. If you guys ever played spades, right? You go blind nil, right? So that blind is, we don't know it, and nil because it's nil. It's the dead.
It's
dead
not
time.
a phrase that is used in the sport that we talk about on this show. So I don't like nil. Okay.
Well, guess what?
Take your soccer or whatever.
It's
other
spades,
sports.
BJ. It's a man. It's not a man. It's a game. It's a game for all adults. A lot of drinking, and spades is a fun game, fun card game, and play it with the group. So we're doing blind nil, and my first thing is, what the hell is up with this preseason schedule? Like, camp starts the 28th of July, and then you go at San Francisco, at Arizona, and then versus Minnesota is the third final one, and that's the 27th. And then you got final cuts the 31st. Camp ends the 5th. Like, I don't get it. Like, what's going to happen? Like, how are they going to treat that third preseason game?
I think they're going to treat it like these guys are barely going to play. I think these guys are barely going to play in the preseason, and you're going to see a lot of missed tackles and a lot of bad football on the physicality side of it early in the season, because again, the coaches are going to reverse engineer this. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, I know the guys need to get physically ready, but if I push them so much that I don't have them, that's the worst thing that could happen. Not that they didn't get enough practice to go out there and do certain reps against certain things. So I don't think those guys are going to play in that third preseason game. I think it's going to be a lot of shells, a lot of thud, a lot less to the ground. Not that Coach Reed did a whole lot of that at camp. But I think you'll see some more injuries. You'll see a lot of over-analysis of all of it. But it is what it is at this point in my eyes.
I think what's really interesting about it now is you're seeing these preseason games shift to more of for the cuts than for the actual players playing in the regular season, is what it seems like it is now. And Nick, we were talking kind of before the show, kind of talking about the schedule. Eventually this is going to go down to 2 preseason games. And then you have to start thinking, well, what are those actually preseason games good for? Like, are the players actually going to play them? Are they going to do them for roster construction? That's kind of the whole thing that I think is a real feeling out period, because this is, brand new first year that there's 17 games in an 18-week schedule. They had to cut a preseason game to tack on the other regular season game. So it's all a feeling out process. And that's kind of, I think, the great mystery for everyone on the other side of this podcast, right, is what's going to happen for these preseason games? Are they going to be, worth going into the game and seeing? And I know that there have been limited capacity last season and people just want to see Chiefs football, but are you really going to see Chiefs football at these preseason games? I think that's kind of some of the questions that we've been getting asked in our Discord channel on the KC Sports Network. And people are asking, hey, which games should we go to? What are they going to do in these games? And honestly, I hate answering a question like that. We don't know. Like, I don't know what it's going to be like. And I think that that's kind of just the general consensus around this.
Well, it's funny too with, like, you see workout videos on social media from all the players and everyone stays in tip-top shape. And when you look at the original camp was for BJ before I played, much to your chagrin, like in the 80s, right? When guys had a second job and couldn't work out, but they have training camp to get you ready. But now modern athletes stay ready, right? There's never really a time where you're not ready. So at what point do you say, why do we have to have camp so long? When does camp just turn into like a 2-3 week deal and say, roll into games?
It's a great question, but I think I feel weird saying this to you as somebody who played there, but I feel like there's getting ready and going out there and doing calisthenics or doing the new age training, whatever they call it, the semicircle running. Bobby Stroop on social media used to joke with him about that, where he gave it a fancy word. I go, you're just running in semicircles or something to that effect. But this new age training stuff that guys are ready, but it's a whole different deal when you put pads out there and you're pushing and pulling on somebody else who's trying to stop another grown man from doing something physically that you have to stop him, whether you're on the offensive side, defensive side, whatever it is. That's where the injuries occur, is because there's not enough practice or your body's getting used to those types of little movements. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but that's where I feel like somebody's going to get screwed in this. And Tucker, to your point, if you have less of those games, are the stars going to play less because they don't want to get hurt? Which means that the younger players and those fringe roster guys get as many reps as they were getting in the past. Or some coach is going to say, hey, my starters, I got a new offense, I got a young quarterback, he's got to get those reps. Well, then all those young players who probably aren't going to make the Chiefs roster because they got a really strong one, but the back end of that roster where those guys may get a practice squad call up somewhere else, those reps mean everything to those guys. And a lot of people, and myself included, are guilty of it. When we talk about the NFL and the players and the rosters, we can overlook what that means to those guys and gloss over those, like, yeah, it sucks for those guys, but let's talk about the stars, because that's what the majority of the content, the podcast, all the stuff's about. But there's some fringe roster practice squad type guys that, with less preseason, if coaches still give their starting guys the same amount of reps, that are going to miss out. And that sucks for those guys to not have as much tape to show the rest of the league.
So injuries occur by accident, and sometimes they can occur when you're tired. I know the times I've gotten hurt, it was one time it was like from behind, so I didn't even see it coming. And then another time I was tired and I felt the pile roll up behind me, and I didn't have I was too tired to lift my legs up, and they just got rolled up underneath. So that's it. I also think too, when you look at it too, if you're talking about second, third, fourth string guys, there's a good number of people who enjoy seeing the bottom half of the roster sort itself out.
Yeah.
Are you guys? Yeah. Tucker, are you in that camp?
I think that there's like you mentioned, there's a certain sect of fans that really enjoy that. You have your casual fans, but then you also have the diehard fans that know all 53 guys on the roster and know who's on the practice squad and stuff like that. So I think these games will be good for them, good to, it'll be good for fans to get to know these players. And I think that it is kind of fun to see these players that, you heard of in college, right? Play for these small schools, and you see them out there on the preseason games, and they're scoring touchdowns. I remember I went to Northwest Missouri State, and Josh Caldwell was at Northwest Missouri State from Kansas City. Blue Springs, I believe, is where he went to high school, and he got on the field. He was an undrafted free agent. He scored a touchdown, and that's just really cool to see. And a lot of the times, that's the only football that he saw. I think he signed up back in Chicago, but he didn't get to be on the active roster there. So it's cool for that perspective of everything, to seeing how that all shakes out. And I think we saw no preseason games last year. There was an uptick in injuries for sure, because these players didn't have a whole lot of time to get ready. Now that also goes into the preseason leading into just the preseason training, now an abbreviated training camp, everything like that kind of piled up. But with a full off season and now an abbreviated preseason, I'm curious to see how that all works out. Of, okay, what are the injuries going to do now? Because there were some people saying, I know some players saying, hey, let's just scrap this preseason games. And I think that's usually the bigger stars who are saying, hey, let's just scrap these preseason games. I don't need to go out here for 3 games, 2 games, and put my body at risk. But I think that's really interesting. It's usually the stars you see that. But to your point, Nick, it's that roster building shakeout at the very end of it that is intriguing, to that 3rd and 4th preseason game. It's always fun to see those guys you watched in college, like a Byron Pringle, end up making the roster, and you see that and you're like, oh, that's awesome. And you always end up cheering for some of those guys too on the bottom half of it.
And I think
Oh, I'm
Sorry,
BJ.
Nick, real quick. The other part of it, and I love that Chiefs fans more than a lot of other fan bases, they're so invested into the team that they understand the roster battles going on in the boss. They
Yeah.
understand those big storylines that are happening with those guys that are getting those reps in the fourth quarter. I wouldn't say the whole fan base cares, because there's always that like sliding scale of fans who just turn it off in the fourth quarter. There's a reason the TV ratings drop and it's all very real. But the people who are watching are diehard fans who just want to watch football, or they want to support their guys or their storylines. But I honestly believe that if you, and this is where I had a different perspective, and I have a different one to this day, even though I don't know those guys personally. It's like when you are there day in, day out, like I was for 6 years, just seeing how much time went in. And Nick, you're a testament, anybody who ever played, like all of the workouts and all of the meetings and all of the shit that you put through your entire life to get to that point is met and realized in its like top moment for all of those guys in that fourth quarter. Like they may get a chance to go play a little bit, but they don't get a ton of it. And for a lot of those guys, if you were making a moment, like a football movie about their lives, like Invincible, like that's the highlight of their life. And I respect the hell out of it. And I love watching that, not from a who's going to make the roster, but it's just like that dude is living his dream right now and he knows it. And he knows this may be his last chance. And I just appreciate the hell out of watching it. I know it makes me sap like all the crap that I get made fun of for, but like I invest in that stuff. So that's why I love watching the end of those games.
I got you. Okay, so then last little quick topic, and I want to hear you guys. Week 1 or preseason game 1, how many reps are the starters getting? Is it like back in the day where they just get like a series or a quarter? Are they going to go 2 quarters, a couple good drives? What are you thinking?
I think it's got to be at least a quarter, right? As what I'm thinking, maybe a quarter and a half. I don't see a full half of football being played by the starters, but you got to kind of expedite this process, right, of getting the starters ready with only 3 games. So maybe a first quarter in the first game would do it for them.
I think you see Patrick Mahomes play one drive where he hands the ball off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire twice and throws a bubble screen to McCole Hardman. I'm going on record, July, whatever today is, that is the first drive that I think that the Chiefs have. I don't think there's any chance that, and I don't know this, I have no reason to believe this, but I think from Coach Reed or the Chiefs or any perspective, you always want your guys to be ready. You want to get them a lot of reps, but at the end of the day, the only thing that you would not be able to live yourself for is by giving extra reps and somebody gets hurt. By putting him out there when he doesn't have to be out there. If that means it takes him 2 or 3 games during the regular season to go into it, that's fine because it's Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes at 80% feeling his way through the first quarter of the season, to me, is better than calling 4 play action passes on a 9-step drop in a preseason game, hoping that that block gets picked up and they don't blitz and somebody lays out our quarterback in a game that doesn't matter. So, and that there would be an understanding that you wouldn't call plays like that in a preseason game between coaches. Not that stuff would happen, Nick.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's not like they're all friends.
I'm satisfied with your answers. And I'd say from my perspective, I'd say week 1 will be a quarter. It's like a blending. And then week 2 will be a half. And then I don't think starters play week 3. Like, I think they're just like, no, like you're good. Like play a series and that's it. So that's how I feel about that one. Now, in the spirit of blind nil, Tucker, you now have the talking stick, and we're curious to see what your topic is that we know nothing about.
So I wrote down 3 different topics because coming to the table, I wanted to be prepared. Stay ready so you don't.
This podcast is going to be an hour long. Presented by Jack Stack.
Listen, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But I think I have a good one for kind of going off what Nick's topic was. There's now 17 games in this NFL schedule, right? So with an extra game, how do you think this really impacts the stats? How do you think this makes Patrick Mahomes look and everything like that? I know we've kind of briefly touched on it with the KC Lab did a little bit, but I kind of want to dive into it more. Not only Mahomes, but you're going to have Kelsey, you're going to have Hill. Are these records all just going to be null and void essentially at this point?
Nick, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. So it almost reminds me of when the NC2A added into bowl games into stats. So you're sort of, cleaning the slate on records. And I like how this is coming off a year, you know, the extra game for the stats wise, which players don't give a shit about until they're whatever, trying to make money in their contract or at the end of their careers. You know, I think what's going to happen is that you have a very hungry, a very motivated Chiefs squad who felt like they were embarrassed in the Super Bowl. So now you have a bunch of guys who are motivated, ready to go. And I think this will be a year where, you know, if I'm not a fantasy football guy, but if you're fantasy football, I'd be taking all of the Chiefs players. Like, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of stats put up this year.
The stats discussion has always been an interesting one because it's so convoluted now, because some people include postseason, not to hijack the question, but we talk about stats now, having worked there and coming up with records and being part of the team that would announce like, hey, so-and-so is 3 touchdowns away from setting the record for such and such. It's one thing to put that out as a media entity and be wrong and have to delete it. It's another thing to be the team and put out your own stats and be wrong. So we played in this space a lot, and our postseason stats included when you talk about career numbers. In general, they're not. Postseason is a completely separate thing. Whenever you talk about they have the most touchdowns in NFL history, yada, 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 it's only regular season games. I hate this adding the 17th game and the stats changing, not because I'm this historian, but because I'm going to hate the discussions of asterisks and eras and having to change the stats and all the crap that is going to fill up everything full of conversations that don't matter 101. I think it's best for the game right now. You already can't compare eras because the game is called differently. It's played differently. All of it is completely different. So I hate this conversation, Tucker, but as soon as you start, I said, I was sitting here like, don't bring it up. Don't bring it. So yeah, I think it's going to jack everything up no more than the league becoming a passing league has. I mean, what are like 5 of the top 10 passers in NFL history are all within like the last 15 years or something. Like there was a stat like that up of like NFL yardage leaders with Peyton Manning and Drew Brees and Tom Brady, and Phillip Rivers is up there, and Roethlisberger's I think on his way up there. So it's going to get to a point where stats are only era based and should only be discussed within their own eras, in my opinion.
Yeah, stats are tricky like that, though. I mean, I think that you kind of nailed it right there. And Nick, you brought up a good point too. These stats are going to be used a lot in contract discussions, right? So you're going to have Tyreek Hill, who has made some claims. You know, he doesn't know if he's going to get extended. He just plays football on the field. We don't know what Tyreek Hill is going to end up doing. But then he goes out here and he puts up a record number, but he gets to play one more game. So it's just like, how do you measure all that? I think is really interesting with the first year. Now, in 15 years down the road, BJ, this stuff's not going to matter. You're going to be like, oh, they added a 17th game. We forgot about that. And all the stats will even out just like that. All the records are going to be washed away. But I just think with this year, it's going to be so interesting. Like it's going to be a career year for everyone, right? Just because of the 17th game. So I think that whole topic, that whole conversation, right, is a very, what was the word you used, BJ?
For which part?
Just about this whole words. He did about just like the generalities of this conversation. It's very subjective, maybe, because you can make stats say whatever you want them to say. I think that. Yeah, so I think in this situation too, you start to look at it with the 17th game, and from the players' point of view, while they might not care about them at the time, there's going to be players come up in these contract situations and be like, hey, look, I set this record last year, and they're going to be like, well, you added a 17th game, but you can say, hey, it's still a record. So that's going to be a really murky waters, I think, to tread.
Yeah, luckily the players don't have to have those conversations with teams,
That's
so
true.
There'd be a lot more feelings that would be hurt a lot more often. There's a reason that players should have agents, in my opinion, and their egos staying in check and being able to worry about what they can worry about. I think that's all part of it. And I'm sorry that I didn't remember what word you were looking for. I was too distracted by being insulted by Nick. I heard that.
I'm glad you heard that. I am. Right. Damn it, you made me lose my train of thought too, because that's what I was going to say.
Put that on me.
Has Mahomes ever played week 17 of the old thing anyway? So he was already down one game anyways, still setting crazy records,
His debut was in week 17.
Yeah,
No,
he played the
as a
Denver
starter.
game.
As a starter.
Oh.
As a full-time starter.
He did start that game.
No. He didn't start week 1. But has Mahomes started week 1
and he
then
came back
played
in
week
relief.
17?
No, he did in 2018 because I was at that game against the Raiders. That was when he set the 50 touchdown, 5,000 yard mark. That was, I think, the only year that he's done it, though, was in 2018.
Yeah, it is. It is. So it'll be interesting to see if he can best that record then.
It'll be 60 touchdowns and 6,000 yards with the extra game.
Just telling me won't. The best, it could end up being the best thing. We talked about this, and I know everybody's like, "Oh, you're just trying to make it sound good." But the way these guys are wired, that losing that Super Bowl to Tom Brady, and the way that then they go and win all the ESPYs and all this stuff, like, not that it matters and that it's real on like a conscious level, but on a subconscious level, you can't tell me it doesn't motivate those guys when they see it all, and that in a couple of years we may look back and be like, you know what, they maybe needed a little motivation at that point. Maybe they need a little reminder that other teams are good too.
Agreed.
Yeah. So BJ, that's all I have on that topic. I'll just give you a little peek of what else I wrote down. There's a you don't have to answer all of them, but
the island of misfit ideas.
Yeah, essentially is this what it is, because I think all of these are going to expire as soon as this podcast ends. But there was a tweet going around that said wide receiver route running is not a skill. There's been a bunch of wide receivers talking about it. I didn't know.
It come from an egg?
Really, essentially. And then another one I had, what will it take for Travis Kelce to be the best tight end ever? So I know there's a lot of discussions about Travis Kelce already being the best tight end, but
done.
Here,
there it is.
Tucker, I'll give you the quick breakdown. When other receivers talk about, man, this dude's a great route runner. Enough said. I mean, that's a thing that other receivers talk about. And you can say, man, this guy really, man, there's a lot of stuff you can do. There are lazy route runners, people who didn't make it because they're lazy route runners, and you round off, a certain, like any sort of wide receiver thingy, whatever the hell they do. I can't think. I need a bang. That it's like, that's an issue. It's a skill. It's a skill. But there are some quarterbacks who say, listen, I'm going to throw it to this spot on this play. You better be there. And it's like, okay, get to that spot. And then what was the other one? What was the other topic?
Travis Kelce about being the best tight end.
Time.
What does he have to do?
Time. That's it. Just time. That's it.
Health.
That's all he needs.
Yeah.
Time and health. That's it.
If he stays healthy and plays as long as Tony Gonzalez did, he's going to shatter everything that everyone ever did. And the beauty in his game is that it will translate well to him getting older.
Oh, man.
And I think we saw a glimpse of it during that tight end U thing, which is phenomenal, by the way. And everybody should give like a legacy payment, kind of like the old days, to Duke Manyweather, because he started that. Actually, Von Miller, because that started it, to Duke Manyweather. But they've started figuring out that eventually there's going to be like a guard summit. There's going to be a cornerback summit led by somebody. But it's going to be like every position group. That's not the corner that I was thinking off the top of my head, but I'm not saying that name because we're not going down that road right now. Guy in San Francisco. So, Dion. Dion.
Yeah, there we go. Well,
Richard
BJ,
Sherman,
what do you have?
Nick. Richard Sherman, Nick.
All right, he's legit.
He's a good quarterback. Good quarterback. So, BJ, what do you got up for us?
All right. So, last but not least, third topic. I love talking about nostalgic, kind of comparing like old things to new things and how different eras, how players would respond to different eras if different things were available. So, within that, each of us, and luckily for me, I've had time to think about it, and I will go first for that reason, are going to come up with a player who we feel like would be viewed differently from a legacy / just branding, just kind of like fan, how they're viewed would be different if social media were available back in the day. We've always said it in terms of, your heroes wouldn't be your heroes if you got to see everything, yada, yada, yada. But just not in a negative way, but just who's a player that you feel like would be viewed differently? And I'll go first because
any sport?
Sure. Yeah. I don't care what sport it is. So, and I'll give my first example to give you guys an idea of kind of the route that I'm thinking. Mine is Terrell Owens. I feel like if social media was available at the time that T.O. was playing, the way that T.O. carried himself and just that confidence, that attitude, you would have seen it more prevalent in the league from everyone, where he wouldn't have been kind of singled out as that cocky football player who he kind of owned it and it became part of his brand and he used it, which helped him in the moment, which hurt him down the road for reasons that were out of his control and that were not correct. Not a discussion worth having. But I do think he's a player that would be viewed differently, that in a good or bad way. I just feel like he was so good at using media with his agent, with Drew Rosenhaus. They were so good at it, and they were first to kind of brand him in that way and get that kind of controversial figure that I feel like if social media were around, he wouldn't have had the same everyone would have been kind of on equal platform. Where a guy like Chad Johnson, I think he would own Twitter. Right now, I think if social media was around, I think Chad Johnson would have absolutely murdered it. But Nick, I want you to go and share a player that you think would be viewed differently if social media were around 20, 30 years ago.
Babe Ruth.
Explain.
Well, okay, so I love all these facts, and like you look at like Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle. Those guys were some serious dirtballs. Like
yeah, that's where you want to go with it.
Degenerate,
to go there.
Degenerate, alcoholic, whatever's, and like I think those guys back in the day, there was that media would cover, right? They would cover.
Who do you think they were drinking with?
Well, whoever, but they would cover for them. And then if Twitter was back in the day, it's like now you've sort of turned. Journalists now don't cover for players anymore, right? Because the world is too transparent with social media. Yeah. So you really can't, because the truth comes out. Like if someone gets booked any sort of jail, we know about it within 5 minutes.
TMZ knows about it within a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think Babe Ruth would be, he'd be a guy where you're like, he's this revered person who visited sick kids and stuff like that. But it's like he's also the guy in the bars, before a game, stuff like that. He's I think his brand would be different. It'd be, and I think those who know would be like, okay, that's my guy. And if you didn't know, you're like, oh God, like he can't be my kid's role model anymore.
I like of all the examples of anyone that you could pick up this idea with, because this translates to don't meet your heroes. Like there's a lot of players that I feel like going to this. That you went with Babe Ruth.
The OG just to kick it off, just to get and it also speaks on the different eras as well too. I mean, there's a whole different era, and it's like I like that video of the San Francisco streetcar 1906 and the video camera, and it's like just a video camera on the back of a streetcar, and it's going wherever, and people are walking in and out, and I'm like, that's a different era, man. It's just different world. It's another universe.
And a whole different conversation, Tucker, before I get yours, Nick, because I'm almost terrified to say it out loud, but it brings into the point of like taking today's sensitivities and what we judge as like normal for a man, like just not, and I don't want to say it the wrong way, but like whatever anyone does judge differently today than it was 80 years ago, right, wrong, or indifferent. So do you put today's more like moral compass back then, and how do you judge people? And we're going to change Babe Ruth's legacy here on Outside the Trenches because it doesn't really matter, but it's a fun discussion topic.
It is.
Yeah. Well, in the same vein as Nick, I kind of thought of one where I was like, okay, this guy's reputation wouldn't be as good. First guy I thought of was Michael Jordan, because we all know, it's out now that he had a gambling problem, and there's been some bad things out about him, but people highly revere him as a person that you want people to look up to. And I think that his legacy could possibly be changed, if he had social media around back then, if people were snapping pictures of him wherever he went or recording videos of him wherever he went. But a guy that I think that could really have benefited from it was Bo Jackson. People today love the workout videos, and imagine the workout videos Bo Jackson could have put out there, because there's all kinds of legends. One of my favorite 30 for 30s is You Don't Know Bo, and they talk about just all the legends about him throwing rocks through screen doors and just jumping over creeks and doing all these things where he's literally larger than life. It seems like he's a folklore character. I just would like to see some of those workout videos of him, just chucking hay bales or just doing Bo Jackson stuff, because unfortunately I didn't get to see him play, and that's one of those players that like I see clips of and like see the highlights of, and like, man, like that dude was a different breed. Like he was clearly on a different plane than everyone else he was playing against. And I think he really could have benefited from that, because he was a shy guy. He still is a pretty shy guy, and maybe his look is a little different if there is all this video stuff of him out there.
My favorite part of that damn Bo Jackson thing was at the end where he was like, you watch football. And he's like, yeah, I might turn on Monday Night Football, watch a little bit, but then I'll tell my wife, hey, I'm gonna go to the my rec room and make arrows. I was like, Bo, don't give two shits about football. He's like, I'm out. Like, he's like, I'm good. Like I had my fill, and that's that. So yeah, that would have been different. It would have been interesting to see. That's for sure. Archuleta had some good workout videos with the stuff he was doing back in Archuleta.
I remember that because he used to do, I don't know why, because damn workout video. That's why I remember this. But he used to do like push-ups, and he would do like a 360. He would like go down and he would push himself up, and his body would do a 360 and he would land. Yeah. And I remember that because I was like, wow, that's what it takes physically to be an NFL safety. Be like, yeah, I never had a shot. Like, I don't know anyone that has ever been that athletic to be able to do that. Tucker, who was the first player you brought up before Bo?
Michael Jordan.
That's right. Yeah, I wanted to spin this off and bring up one more discussion topic because I got in an argument on Facebook. Not a good place to get an argument.
Oh, no.
Yes. God. And it was on my own page. So, like, I know these people. Well, except for a bunch of Chiefs fans who just started friending me, and I said yes, and now I have conversations with them. But I had responded because, Tucker, to your point about, like, putting heroes up on a pedestal in the way that athletes today are under their microscope in a way that they've never been before. And that Michael Jordan, in some ways, you would have expected more things to come out, but if he would have known that he couldn't do those things, then he would have hit it better, like some people do today's or however they get it, like do stuff. But I've had this argument with people about LeBron James because there's such disdain for LeBron. And I feel like so much of that comes, and there is, people just hate LeBron. And I don't think it has anything.
They exist on Facebook. Yes.
No, but I don't think it has anything to do with LeBron. I know this is probably like most obvious statement ever, but it has to do with, like, if you bring up the LeBron Michael Jordan statement just in passing, it's such a tired argument now that people are like, he's never going to be Michael, like, screw him. And like, they're mad. I'm like, he's never tried to do anything but honor Michael Jordan. Like, it's his hero. So and now with all the Space Jam, like, critic stuff coming out, it's like, it's a damn movie with our cartoons. Did you expect there to be like an Oscar performance? Like, what were you expecting from this movie, first of all? And is that fair to LeBron? But the Facebook, to get all the way back, like the Facebook post about, like, he's never misstepped, like he's never had these big dramatic, like, problems. And it's that, should you reward him for that? And I brought up, you can not reward him for being a good guy, a good role model, not causing the kind of problems that even Michael Jordan and these other athletes that we put up on a pedestal do. Yeah. But he's put hundreds or even like 1,000 kids through some crazy number that has not been promoted or stories and been told enough. There's been hundreds and hundreds of kids through college, and he's never had a misstep. And we're talking about LeBron, the closest thing that we've ever had to Michael Jordan as an athlete, has gone through the social media era without any kind of a major mishap. And if you want to say that the decision was just this big promotion, just huge miss. Like, the whole thing was a miss because he was trying to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club. Yeah. Like, that's the whole reason that it looked bad. It was like, that was self-promotion. I'm like, yeah, he was trying to freaking help, and he realized, hey, I should have professionals do this, like, and let them do that kind of promotional stuff. But that's it. And then leaving and creating super teams and all that. Like, come on.
No.
You have no idea. He wasn't going to keep raising money for the Cleveland owner. Like, that's pretty obvious whether that's out there or not, but
yeah. Well, and I think I love how LeBron's biggest misstep was going to his kid's basketball game and sitting courtside with Drake and being a distraction. Like I love how people are so adamant to try to get LeBron that it's like, oh, look at him yell at this ref, make it about
look at him be a dad.
Jordan was better. Because of that. And it's like, man, you started at school.
Jordan would never.
He pays for kids at school in Cleveland.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, God, what do you want this guy to do? And it's like, man, first of all, don't let your kids look up to athletes, right? Look up, to yourself as parents. and then say, you know what, work hard, do all that stuff. And it's like, man, you can if you want though, but yeah, he would be one. I would tell my son, like, yeah, look up to him.
Yeah, I would say like there's a guy who did it right. I would say look up to him, emulate him, all that. Be like, look, guy went through, did the right things, cut through all the BS, and didn't fall into any of the BS traps and get caught off course. He stayed the course, and he is who he is, and he did what he did, and he helped people along the way. And he was one of the best to ever do it, and we can all debate that forever. And he's never been a jackass about all of it, any of it. Which is the annoying part. I feel like most people who disdain him because of everyone else. It's kind of similar to, not at the same level of Tom Brady, because there has been things that he's done, but the Deflategate and all the crap where everybody's been talking about. Like, I think a lot of people don't like him just because so much has been said about it.
Yeah. People love to hate on winners.
Oh man, yeah. Then we get to see it firsthand essentially every day, right? You get all these sports talk shows. I should air quote sports talk shows, because they're not really like that. If you look at Undisputed on Fox Sports, First Take, they're all just throwing stuff out there, putting fuel to the fire, because everything is just, now this is probably a larger conversation, right? But just everything in the country is so divisive, and you bring that into sports, and now they make everything in sports so divisive.
If Patrick Mahomes, if we win like 5 Super Bowls, and I know it's very like, oh, that's really cocky. I'm just saying if the Chiefs go off and the greatest start to a quarterback's career in NFL history continues, because that's what we've seen. If he goes off, and like Kent Swanson said earlier from the laboratory, tweeted earlier, like the floor of Patrick Mahomes' career has been a loss in the AFC title game in overtime in which he didn't get the ball. That's the worst that we've ever seen. If that continues, then you're going to see a country start to dislike Patrick Mahomes at a very big rate because he's going to be too good. And Chiefs fans are not going to be able to help themselves. They're going to get too cocky about their guy, and they're going to shrug off anybody else saying any other quarterback's good at anything. He's like, well, he's no Mahomes. Like, yeah, but Josh Allen can still be a good player. Right. Like, that's okay. It's okay to have he's a great quarterback.
Great, yeah.
And that's okay to say. But they're going to become insufferable, and people are going to start to turn on Mahomes because of it.
Don't be like Boston.
Don't be like the Patriots. We've been saying this, Nick, for 3 years since Patrick Mahomes has been drafted. Don't become Patriots fans.
Well, it's funny. I remember who's the Chiefs beat writer for ESPN? Adam Teicher, right? I loved Adam because I remember I would do a pre-show.
Is that so? Tuck, it's just me and you because Nick is.
You're good. Oh. Yeah, no. If your team's winning, you're a good reporter. ESPN will put you up higher, and if you're losing, you'll get buried. So, yeah.
We're gonna infer what you said because you froze for a minute and we did not hear that. But are you saying that like numbers were dictating if a reporter is good?
Yeah, basically.
The team.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think the best content that NFL teams, especially like internal teams, because that's the way I always looked at it. I just feel like the best content that teams have to put out is when the team is losing, because you can't focus on what's happening on the field. So you focus on storytelling. Shocker, whenever the Chiefs were struggling, like those stretches with the Chiefs, it was like, I'm going to go to long form storytelling because I can't talk about what's happening over here. And I need to feel like I'm doing my job, which is connecting the fans to the team. And if I can't do it because the team is good, I'm going to do it by telling some stories. And everybody thinks like that. It's not unique. But you see a lot of that storytelling. So some of the best storytelling you've ever seen from the Chiefs came out in like 2011, 2012. Like it was Rob Alvarino and that crew doing the Joe Delaney documentaries. All those Chiefs Kingdom documentaries that we share to this day were all done during a stretch in which the team wasn't very good, because you got to think outside the box. Tuck knows. All right, Tuck, you've only been alive since the Chiefs have been good and Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback.
Hey, I'm not that young.
You celebrated like your 8th grade graduation with Patrick Mahomes getting drafted. I mean, that was probably around the same time.
Patrick Mahomes was drafted when I was in high school, not my 8th grade graduation. But
wait, what year were you born?
No, Nick, don't engage this. He's like 14 years old.
Say it.
I was born in 1998.
That's.
There's a picture of me right back here in 1998 punting in high school. Like claim to fame, like high school punter, right over there. Nick's probably got his high school helmet from Texas. But he's a city boy, so it's probably a really clean helmet.
You're dumb as crap, BJ. This thing.
You're the Texan who doesn't claim any Texan type things because you're from the city. Texan pride. I'm just gonna poke at you to see how much like Texan I can get out of you before you're like, all right, I'm not going there.
That's all you'll get. I liked. Hey, by the way, this segment, this episode, Blind Nil, was really good. I like that. I like that a lot.
So fans who are listening to this, as we have a terrible way of wrapping up shows, and if you're still listening, then you know this and you're used to this. That if you like this format of the show, hit us up on social media, comment below on the YouTube video, and let us know in the comments that you like this segment. And Tucker is going to do a good job of making sure to put the merch link in the comment section in the description of the YouTube, along with the link to our Substack, so you can get the great written content for those watching on YouTube. Tucker is pointing at himself in a weird way that makes me think he's saying, I got this. That. Be very careful, Tucker, about how I'm viewing what you're doing right there.
I knew what you meant. Yeah, he was pointing. For those of you listening on audio only, he was pointing
Go to YouTube
down to the comments section or below the videos in YouTube, and that's where he wanted you to place a comment.
That's not wasn't DMXing it or anything. Hey, that's an older reference. Hey, look at that. Look at me.
I was listening to DMX when you were born, player. That was that. That's
probably.
I was. Yeah, he put out that album junior year of high school. It's legit. It's so good.
Rest in peace.
All right. That's a great way to end this show. We thank you all for listening. Again, let us know in the comment section if you like this style of show, as we do more discussion-based stuff, and you can get your breakdowns, your nerdy X's and O's stuff from the laboratory twice a week here on KC Sports Network. And then one-on-one with Jeff Allen and Mike DeVito starts consistently weekly next week. We also have a post-game show and information on that is going to be coming out soon, along with the entire college side of our network. And a bonus show in a month, mid-September. We will have 8 shows per week here on KC Sports Network. So we appreciate your support and appreciate you continue to let your friends know, because that is the way the word is going to spread. You don't get a lot of media companies that are going to help other media companies tell everybody what they're doing. So this is all going to be organic as we continue to grow this thing and try to put out great content. We appreciate all your support. And for anybody watching on YouTube, you're watching Nick take credit for being a Texan, but he's a city boy in his words. So those two things to me just do not make sense. Maybe we'll put a poll out on Twitter, Nick, and ask, you city boy and Texan, can you be both of those things? Can you claim both those things?
Interesting.
Let us know in the comment section. My wife says time to end the show.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
See ya.